Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on Chapter 3. But before we get into actually talking about the material, I want to first ask you guys a question. What is the purpose of accounting? Why are we doing all this? Why are we doing all these calculations, crunching all of these numbers? Why is this, lady over here working so hard? Why is she doing this? What's the reason? Well, if I haven't made it clear to you by now, hopefully you know that the whole reason that we do accounting, the purpose of accounting is to provide information to help make decisions. Okay, every single day in business, managers need to make decisions about all kinds of things. And the purpose of accounting is to help provide them with the information they need that's going to help them make the right decision that is in the best interest of their business. And that's actually what Chapter 23 is all about. Chapter 23 is called Relevant Costing for Managerial Decisions. So it's essentially going to talk about how we use managerial accounting information to make those specific decisions. So first of all, I want to talk about the steps in the decision-making process. So first of all, you want to define your task or goal. What is the decision that you're trying to make? Okay. Then you want to identify the alternative actions. Like, if I have choice A or choice B, I could do A or I could do B. What are which one should I choose? Okay. Then number 3 is to collect relevant information. And we'll talk in a moment about what I mean by relevant information. And this information could be financial and it could also be non-financial. And I'm going to talk about what those are, but the financial information is going to come from accounting. Okay, the non-financial information is going to come from some other place, which we'll talk more about in class. But the financial information is what the accounting information is going to provide. Then, once you have all of your relevant information, you select your course of action and you do it. After you do it, you take a moment to step back and analyze and assess the decision. Did we make the right decision or not? And, even though we're not focusing that much on this part of the decision process, we're really in this chapter going to be focusing on steps 1 through 4. But 5 is really important too, to afterwards kind of look at your decision and decide, did I do the right thing? Because by taking that time to analyze and assess your decisions, you're going to hopefully, if you made the wrong decision, you can avoid that in the future or do something to fix it. So this part is really important, even though it's not so much a focus of this chapter. So let's first talk about what relevant information means. Okay, so relevant information, as you can see here, is information that varies among the possible courses of action being considered. So if you recall, I said in step 2 we have to consider our alternatives, right? Do I choose A or do I choose B? Okay, and so some things between A and B are going to be the same. And if that's the case, if it's the same, whether A or B happens, it's what we call irrelevant. Okay, but relevant information is anything that would be different between the two. And so we usually classify those things as one of two things. It's either incremental revenue, which means extra revenue that you're going to get from choosing one option over the other. So that means more sales, more money coming in. Incremental cost is going to be any extra cost from choosing one option over the other. So if choosing one option is going to cost you more money or have an additional expense, that's going to be an incremental cost. And so we really just want to focus on those relevant pieces of information, any additional revenues coming in or any additional costs. Now, some additional terms and concepts that you need to know when you are making these decisions are these 3. Okay, so we have here sunk costs. And sunk costs are costs that were incurred in the past. You've already paid for them, and they cannot be changed. No matter if you choose A, B, C, D, E, or F, or Z, it doesn't matter. Those sunk costs are done. Nothing you do now is going to change that happened. Okay? The second term we're going to learn is out-of-pocket costs. Okay? Out-of-pocket costs are costs where it requires a future outlay of cash. You're going to have to pay more cash for that. Okay. Opportunity cost is a potential benefit that you sacrifice when you chose one option over the other. So if you for the option you didn't choose, if you missed out on a benefit there, that's going to be your opportunity cost. So I'm going to give you now some examples to kind of illustrate and help you better understand these terms. Okay. So in this example, it says, I bought a car 5 years ago that cost $10,000. Now I'm deciding whether to keep driving it, which is option A, or B, replace it with a new car for $25,000. So my question to you guys is, what is the $10,000? This $10,000 here, and is it relevant to my decision? So think about that for a moment. Well, hopefully you recognize that that $10,000 is a sunk cost. That means that that $10,000 that we paid 5 years ago is done. It was in the past. And whether I continue to drive it or whether I replace it with a new car, it doesn't change the fact that I paid $10,000 5 years ago. That is an example of a sunk cost. Okay. My next question then is it relevant to my decision? And the answer is no. Because if it doesn't change between A and B, if either way that $10,000 was spent, none of these is going to change that, then it is irrelevant. Remember, relevant costs are only those that are going to be different if I choose A versus B. And the $10,000, if that's not going to change, if that's a sunk cost, then no, it is not relevant to my decision. Okay. Now let's carry on with that example. Okay, in this case, it says the dealer offered this trade. The new car that's worth $25,000, right, this yellow one right here, for the old car, which I spent $10,000 on 5 years ago, plus $20,000 cash. Now the question is, does this trade make sense? Okay. So think about that for a moment. Okay, so if you were doing the math, I don't know if if you were actually thinking about it and putting dollars together, because remember that's what we do in accounting is we gather the financial information. Um, did you think like, oh, the $10,000 of the old car plus the 20,000 cash is $30,000? So I'm going to be giving up $30,000 for a new car of $25,000? Oh my gosh, this trade is not appropriate. Like, why would I give up $30,000 between my cash and my car to get a new car that's only worth $25,000? Does that make sense? Well, here's the problem with that line of reasoning, okay? Because as we talked about, that $10,000 is a sunk cost. It happened in the past. And so it's not relevant to this decision. So you have to take it out of the mix. Therefore, really the only relevant piece, which is the additional cash outlay that you're going to have to do, is the $20,000. Okay? And that additional cash outlay is what we call our out of pocket cost. So the $10,000 was a sunk cost. The out of pocket cost is $20,000. So that means we need to remove that from our decision and then only focus on the 20,000. In that case, we're comparing the 20,000 we have to give up for the 25,000 new car that we're going to get. But the decision doesn't stop there, okay? Because like I mentioned, if you're just looking at the math at that point and you're looking at $20,000 versus $25,000, you'll notice a $5,000 differential from giving up your old car. And so you have to ask yourself, what is that $5,000 differential? Is it worth it or not? So There is where non-financial factors come in. And those are other things that you don't necessarily see if you're just looking at the numbers, but they're important and relevant to your decision. So let me give you some examples. Okay? Maybe you have an emotional attachment to that old car. Maybe it was like your first car. Maybe you like took it on a cross-country trip and you just love that car. You have a nickname for it. You clean it and wash it and wax it and you just feel really close to that car. Well, obviously that's going to play into your decision. Okay. Another thing might be like the environmental impact of your old car. Maybe your old car is like a gas guzzler and it's not good for the environment, but the new car is, a hybrid or something and it's better for the environment. So you might say, well, actually, because this new car has that environmental positive impact on the environment, I'm going to pick the new car instead. Or maybe there's the needs of your work or your family. Like maybe you need whatever, a certain type of car for work that can seat more passengers. My dad used to be a realtor, so he always had to have like a really big, comfortable car because he was driving his clients around from house to house so that they could look at their houses. So that was important for him. Or maybe, your family's growing, you have a new baby coming, so you need a bigger car for a car seat or something like that. So these are non-financials that you're going to consider to when you think about, is my old car, that $5,000 basically that I'm getting for my old car, is that worth it? Okay, but the point is that you don't want to let this $10,000 sunk cost cloud your judgment from focusing on just what is relevant. And what is relevant is what you're potentially getting, which is the 25,000, versus what you're giving up, which is the 20,000, versus these non-financial factors associated with the new versus the old car. Okay. Now let's look at another example. Okay, in this example, it says this summer, should you A, go to summer school, which will cost $1,000, or B, work and earn $4,000? Okay, well, if you're doing the math on that, then under A, you would have an incremental cost of $1,000 negative. You have to pay $1,000 for your class. Okay, and then for B, you'd have incremental revenue, meaning you could be making $4,000. Okay. Now, of course, a lot that goes into this is non-financial factors, okay? So for example, you could ask, do I need the money for something specific, right? Maybe like, does my family really need that money? Or do I need to save up to buy a new car or buy a computer or whatever it is? That's going to impact your decision. You might also ask, like, do I like the job, right? If it's a job you don't really like that much, you might just go, forget it. I'd rather just take a class. Okay, so these are non-financial factors that play into your decision. And for a lot of you guys, like, why are all of you in this class? Why did you choose to go to school instead of working? Well, I think a lot of you guys recognized that kind of factor that if you get a good education, eventually you're going to be able to make way more than this $4,000 once you have your degree. So, there obviously are some non-financial factors that play into it. Okay, but let's assume you decide to go to summer school. Okay, and which will cost you $1,000. And then you were going to try to prepare your summer income statement. Well, what you might try to do is say, well, the cost of the class is $1,000, and then not working is $4,000. So basically, I have a loss of $5,000. You guys think that? Okay, some people do, okay? And you could look at it that way, but technically, you can't, okay? So here's the thing. This $4,000 is what we call an opportunity cost, okay? And an opportunity cost, like we already discussed, is an opportunity given up, okay? Meaning I gave up that $4,000 because I wasn't working. I chose to go to school instead. Now, this $4,000 is definitely relevant to your decision, but it is not a cost on your income statement. The reason why is if you choose to go to school, yes, you have to pay $1,000 for the class, but you don't also then have to pay $4,000 to anybody. It's just an opportunity that you gave up. So that's really important to note because when you're making your decision, you don't want to kind of like double count something to say, well, I'm going to have double the cost. It doesn't really work that way on your income statement, okay? Because it's not a true cost, it's an opportunity cost. And you'll see more about that when we practice some more problems in class. So ultimately, the lesson to be learned here is that I want you guys in this chapter to focus on relevant costs only because irrelevant costs may distract you and cause you to make the wrong decision. And like I said, we're going to look at several different examples of these types of decisions this week in class.